You know, staff reports.
Good work. Convincing applicant. Sure. Sure.
Calling to order the April 18th, 2024 meeting of the Historic Resources Commission here in 111 North Front Street, room 204. It is now 4:02 p.m. The next business meeting of the commission will be Thursday, May 2nd, 2024 at noon, 111 North Front Street, second floor, room 205, next door. The next hearing of the commission will be Thursday, May 16th at 4 p.m., 111 North Front Street, second floor here in room 204. Swearing in the staff this evening. Jacqueline, do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening?
I do, Jacqueline myself.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jacqueline. And introduction of the commissioners here present this evening, starting on my right. Matt Laker,
Clyde Henry.
Justin Cave,
Stewart giving point forward.
Jacqueline, do we have any items this evening for public forum?
So we do have the council list on the agenda. And I can touch base on that unless we want to do the minutes first, these minutes first.
We can do the staff approvals first. So there's no public forum items.
Yeah, no public forum.
Okay, got it. Yes, let's move into approval of the staff approvals.
I move to approve the staff approvals.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Seeing, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion passes. Moving on to approval of the minutes from the last meeting, which was March 21st, 2024.
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Having a motion and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes. Moving on to common staff approval lists and a potential vote here. So Jack.
Yep. Okay, so common staff approval is basically the gist is that we've had for a number of years, a bunch of disparate varying staff approval lists for each historic commission, despite the fact that all historic commissions follow the same city code, and a lot of the staff approvals say basically the same thing, but with different kinds of wording. So rather confusing for applicants and for, you know, what could be approved and what's the specifics there. So we've gone through all the list and made sure they're clarified and that everything is consistent. We've also gone and looked back at like the past 5 or 6 years of what has been opted and moved to staff approval by the commission and seeing that anything could be added to the staff approval list for that to help focus or have the commission focus on those bigger applications, not those routine things that staff can probably staff approve, but bring that time up for the applicants, the commission, and staff. Then we've also looked at different comparable cities. So some of those are cities that are just nearby. Some of those are cities that are similar size, but some of them we looked at cities that have a larger historic districts or a number of historic properties, like Philadelphia, maybe a little bit further, just for that comparison. But definitely some of those cities had some different and interesting things. So some things decided not to use, such as staff approving a large building. That seemed more the point of having the commissions to look at those kind of applications. But for any of those we kind of looked at, and we had that sheet right there for justification. And so basically you'll see anything in white just hasn't been changed at all. It's just carried over. Anything in yellow has been reworded. It's the same thing, but it's been beefed up or clarified. And then anything in green is a new item. And some of these items are also taken from other commission staff approvals. So all those factors played into here. If you take a look, and then if anyone has questions, concerns, feel free.
Yeah, I kind of, for one, would say that this actually helps, just utilizes, capitalizes on efficiency, timing, and your expertise, both you individually, your team, the department. A lot of these things have historically, I think over several members here can testify, several of these things have been moved to staff approval. And Jacqueline, just for everybody's reference, my understanding too is if you had any clarity or question even on your side, you would then still bring it forward as a case to the group as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, so if you'll see at the top of the staff approval list, it'll say that they have to meet coding guidelines. So if they don't meet coding guidelines, we're going to bring it to the commission. The code also says that for any reason, staff can bring an item to the commission. So something seems off or something very particular about a property, we'll bring it to the commission.
Great. And is this would be a motion to support, but not necessarily approve?
I think we are looking for a vote of approval. I do have my colleague Billis here, who's also been spearheading this. So if you have any questions, that she'd also give me a nod, yes. So please vote for approval.
And just, yeah, I just wanted to clarify process-wise, if this is a list that ultimately goes on to city council, or does it just rest with our commission?
No, just with the commission.
Okay,
Thank you.
great, thank you. Is there any further questions, commentary, discussion?
Yes.
Ready for a motion?
Sure.
I move to approve the proposed staff approval list.
Okay, there is a motion, is there a second? Second. Having a motion and having a second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, abstention, motion passes. Thank you, Jacqueline, and we look forward to continuing to work with the department.
So that's great.
Great. Moving on to applications for certificate of appropriateness. And I guess we're sort of starting with continued application, correct? Number
Yes,
two.
that's right.
So that would be HR 24030118, 4837 Olentangy Boulevard.
Perfect. And the applicant is here.
They want to approach forward. Before you sit down, we'll have you raise your right hands. If you each raise your right hands, if you each swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, and if you could both state your full name and association with the property clearly for record.
I'm John Alexander, the owner.
David Corzan, owner of Peg Windows and Doors, and company contracted Grace Windows.
Okay, we'll turn over to Jack and start off. We'll come back to some questions.
Okay, so this application for 4837 Olentangy Boulevard, the proposal is to replace the existing historic windows with fully built urban improved windows list placement and materials. So this property is a 1925 property, two-story vernacular, single-family residence with stucco exterior walls. And currently, the existing windows are multi-level casement windows. The application was continued at the March hearing to allow time for staff to conduct a site visit. And the site visit was helpful. We got some clarification. So it sounds like there had been some confusion with the application before. From our understanding at first, we thought there was a mix of historic and non-historic windows, and the damage we were assuming was from the interior. However, the site visit, the applicant confirmed that all windows are historic, and that the damage is coming from the exterior, specifically there's woodpeckers. And if you can see in the first couple of images, some of that damage is evident in those photos. And then some of the photos will show as well the applicant has installed some those temporary flashing, silver things to try to deter the woodpeckers, but they're not having success with those. So I think there's, the other point, the applicant just wanted to know that they were concerned about the age of the windows themselves. With that damage and that clarification from that site visit, we have an either or recommendation for the commission, depending on, what the commission sees in their evaluation. And so that either or is to either recommend replacement of the damaged trim and windows like for like, and approval of low profile metal storm windows with any cut sheets to be submitted to staff to get that final approval. Or staff recommends replacement of the windows to match the historic windows with window from the improved list. And that basis for the staff recommendation is the City Code 3016.11 standards for alterations, specifically numbers 2, 5, 6, 11, as well as the guidelines for windows on pages 51 and 56, and the guideline amendments for window replacement on page 4. And that's it. So that will become a question.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. It's kind of unique. This is the first time we've had an either or recommendation from staff. But we'll open up to the applicant. Feel free to add some commentary or suggestions here, or tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so these are outswing French windows. They've been repaired
quite frequently. You can see that there's significant damage to the frame and sash profiles of the majority of the windows. And a lot of them are really no longer wood. They're actually wood filler. They've been filled so many times, and the glass has been replaced so many times that the true divided light grill bars are actually mostly wood filler on the exterior. There's no application for a storm window on that type of window to allow it to function and open. So you could put a permanently affixed storm window on the exterior, but that you would no longer be able to operate the window because it opens to the exterior. So the plan would be to mimic all of the trim detail and window detail exactly as it is in replacement.
Questions, thoughts?
And your desire is to replace all the windows, correct?
That is correct.
That's what I said. I mean, that's one of the top recommendations. I think I could support that. Sure. I move to approve HR 2403-1 or 018 for 87 at 4837 Owentangy Boulevard. Application is submitted
Okay, and specifically for replacement.
for replacement windows.
So,
Yeah, in kind. Yes. Perfect. Second.
okay, having a motion on a second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so we'll follow up within, it's usually 3 to 5 business days with the certificate of appropriateness. So
Wonderful. Thank you.
On to case number, agenda item number 4, HR 2305-014, 587, 589 South Ohio Avenue. Is anybody here for that property? Do you expect anybody here on that property?
I did not receive a confirmation, so no one here for 587?
We can.
Okay, we can circle back.
Yeah, we'll circle back on that one. Going on to case number 5, that would be 131 Northwood Avenue. If you could raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening.
I do.
If you could state your full name and association with the property for record.
Roger Farrell, Main Street Construction, I'm the contractor.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Chat.
This application for 131 Northwood Avenue is proposing to install a concrete parking pad at the rear or south of the parcel, which would be accessible from North Pearl Street Alley. They would also be removing a portion of the existing fence facing the alley and at a southeast corner to create a 10-foot vision triangle to meet zoning requirements. The new fencing at the east and north sides of the parking pad would be 6 foot high, dome gate board fencing with the gate providing access to the rear yard of the parking pad. So at the April 4th business meeting, the commissioners asked to confirm if the 10-foot vision triangle is required or recommended, and if the applicant would provide the sort of letter of confirmation. The commission asked if the site plan included the surface material and asked if the current fencing would be updated to match the new fencing. The commission also asked if the applicant could clarify with the 24-foot surface material would be on the site plan. So in response to this meeting feedback, the applicant has submitted a revised site plan and has noted that the 10-foot vision triangle is required for the zoning department. We do have a copy of that email attached as part of the materials. The applicant also has updated the site plan to include the surface material and know that it will be concrete. And the applicant noted that the plan is not to install a new fence on the north or east sides of the new parking pad, but rather the rear yard will remain open to the alley. So that existing fence along the alley would be permanently removed. And then the new vision triangle would have the short run of fence, which will match the existing fence. And the 24 feet of material to the west of the new pad was clarified to be just existing grass. So staff recommends approval of application HR 2404-016 at 181 Northwood Avenue, Northwood Park, with any and all clarifications to be submitted to HPO staff for review and approval prior to issuance of the certificate. And the basis for the staff recommendation is the city code 116.13, standards for design improvements, specifically letters A.
Would the applicant like to add anything?
No, that's pretty much it.
I think most of the items here were clarifications. Any thoughts on? Yeah, thank you for clarifying, so. Their motion. So I'll move to approve as submitted. Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, abstention, motion passes.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen.
Moving on to case number 6, that would be 710 South Champion Avenue. We're gonna be here for that. If you could each raise your right hands. Do you swear to tell the truth and testimony before the commission this evening?
Yes, I do.
If you could each state your full name and association with the property for record.
Carl Flippo, one of the owners.
Okay,
Doug Thrush, one of the owners.
okay, wonderful. Absolutely. Okay.
This application for 710 South Champion Avenue is proposing to replace the existing chain link fence in the rear yard with a new board wood fence and gates for the cement materials. They'd also like to replace the existing concrete patio with a new expanded concrete patio and to install a concrete walkway to connect with the rear gate. So at the April business meeting, the commission noted that they have approved patios in the past, but the one proposed seemed a little large. So the commission recommended using some sort of paver, either for the patio space, even if in part, such as for the border, noting solar units not ready for permeability. The commission suggested making the dimensions of the space or marking the dimensions that are intended for the garage and making sure they'll accommodate the zoning requirements, making setbacks off the alley line. And as of the depth dimension of the future garage area, they shown on the plan. The commission noted that they had some concern about the area being used informally for parking in the meantime, but are okay with grass if that is the intent. So in response to business meeting feedback, the applicant has submitted revised drawings reducing the size of the proposed concrete patio. So that would be reduced from the initially proposed 27 by 21 feet to 21 by 21 feet. And they would also are proposing to add a brick border around the patio sidewalk. And they have confirmed that the area intended for the future garage will not be used for parking in the term. So staff recommends approval of application HR 24-04017 at 710 South Champion Avenue, Little Oaks, with any and all clarifications to be submitted to HPS staff for review and approval prior to issuing the certificate. And that recommendation is based on the city code 6.13 standards for sign improvements, letter A, as well as the guidelines regarding fences on page 76 and patios and decks on page 77.
Great. Sounds like there was some good dialogue and some good changes that came out of it. Do you guys want to add anything?
Well, as you can see from the pictures, the current yard is not very desirable. So obviously we just want to make the improvements so that we can enjoy it and add value to the home and the neighborhood. It's to secure the backyard for our dog so that it has a place to be. We've taken all of the recommendations that were given and tried to make as many compromises to what we actually wanted so that we could get this approved. So we're hoping for your approval.
I think you did great. I appreciate the modifications. I'll jump to the motion if everybody feels it's that great, it's appropriate. In regards to HR -24-04-017 to approve as submitted.
Having a motion, is there a second? I'll second. Having a motion, second, is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Going on to agenda item number 7, HR 2404-018, 89 Riverview Park. If you could raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony for the commission this evening?
Yes,
Have you state your full name and association with the property for record?
Elizabeth Price.
Wonderful. Welcome, Elizabeth. Jack.
This application for 89 Riverview Park is proposing to install a window that was removed as a previously approved kitchen renovation. And so the window would be installed on one side of the new patio that was approved. The applicant would also like to move existing French storm doors and put those for the patio, but the actual French doors themselves would remain in place. And so, staff like to add that the contemporary style of the siding of the enclosure and porch may help to avoid historicizing for use in the window. And the applicant has also submitted a drawing bubbled out to indicate the proposed changes from what was last approved in response to the business meeting feedback. They've also submitted a marked up photo, just confirming where that window location was. So staff recommends approval of application HR 240401B 89 Review Park, Old Beach Ball, with any all verifications to be submitted to staff for review and approval prior to issuance of the certificate. That staff recommendation is based on the city code, legal 6.11, standards for alteration, specifically numbers 9, 10, 11, and 12, and the guidelines for windows on pages 52 and 56.
A4. Jacqueline, is that page A4 you were referring to the applicant submitted for the changes?
I'm not seeing any revision clouds or bubbles. Just curious.
And we could probably read it up from the file, because I can confirm it is submitted.
Better. Okay. While they're bringing that up, do you wanna, is there anything you would like to add as the applicant?
I think you've got it,
Okay. What
unless you have any questions, so.
other, any questions? I think we're just looking for clarification on this.
Just it's not. Shows.
Some of what the drawings are coming up, the applicant did submit them, but I can indicate where they bubbled it out. It's, pretty straightforward, so we'll be able to kind of convey that.
Sure. But staff has everything they need to move forward.
Yes, we
Okay.
do. Yeah. So basically, they just circled everything in here, nothing's changing, adding windows. And then over here, it's the French doors, and then we can see what the previous one. Small slide down. Here we go. So that's what the door configuration was before.
No.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, for application number HR 2305-018, 89 Riverview Park Drive, move to approve the application as presented.
Thank you. Their motion, there's a second? I'll second. Having a motion, having a second, and further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, abstention, motion passes. Thank you.
We're good? Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. Beautiful house.
Thank you. You ought to come by sometime.
Turn your feet around. Moving on to case number 8667 Linwood Avenue. Come on forward. If you could raise your right hand, you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening.
Yes.
And if you state your full name and association with the property for record.
Perez Hagiel.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
That's it. Jack.
This application for 667 Linwood Avenue is proposing or has replaced a transom sidelights and a non-historic door with new wood sidelights and the door. There's also been work for the addition at the rear, so removal of the windows at the two-story portion of the addition, and then removal or alteration of the southwest corner with installation of a new porch in that corner, and then installation of new siding on the addition. And the applicant notes that they have also replaced asphalt shingles over the shingle from the approved list. And then they have installed a board-on-board with privacy fence at the rear. So the property includes a brick 2.5-story American 4-square residence with a wood frame 2-story addition at the rear. An application to retain your dormer and return a supplementation of your wood was previously approved at the June 2020 hearing, and that work has been completed. So we have the 1955 MLS photo, which indicates that the entry configuration with the transom side lights was likely the historic configuration. However, the door itself was not the original historic door. So the transom has been removed and sides have been altered. So staff recommends returning the entry configuration, including the transom side lights, and installing either a half light or a similar 3/4 slide door but without the lens to be compatible with the home, and then just including the paint color or view opaque stain. So for the rear addition, this looks to be modified in around 2022 to 2023 for the new other aerial photos. And then the southwest corner was removed to include that porch opening with those 2 windows had the upper story removed and infilled and presumably recited. So the 2-story addition appears on the 2005 county auditor aerial photo. However, there were not too many photos, so older photos of that addition to confirm what it was historically. The 1961 Sanborn shows a single-story wood frame addition and a single-story wood frame at the porch in the rear. So we kind of confirm that the 2-story addition for that second-story portion of this was added after 1961. So the fence installed is a board-on-board with privacy fence and located at the rear. So provided that the fence has the maximum height of 60 feet from grade, staff recommends approval of the privacy fence. And so at the April business meeting, the commission noted that they were okay with the privacy fencing and know that they do have concerns about the alterations to the addition and asked their staff to check for any historic photos or documentation of the addition. So while staff was not able to find older photos at that rear elevation, we have added that 1961 Sanborn map, as well as the earlier auditor aerial photo, just to give an idea of how long that second-story addition has been in place. So staff recommends continuing application HR 2404-019 67 with Avenue in Old Oaks to allow the applicant time to revise the application and code guidelines. The basis for the staff recommendation is the City Code 316.11 standards for alteration, specifically numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 11, and 12, and the guidelines for windows on pages 51 to 56, and doors on pages 64 to 65, as well as the amendments for door replacement. And that's it, so I'll give it over.
Would the applicant like to add anything before we have some discussion?
I'm sorry?
Would you like to add anything at this time?
Yeah, I mean, if you can take a look at the door that was before, I mean, like I try to keep, like the same style of what's going on. It's we have a side light and the door. I mean, the previous door just was like just a piece of wood and it was all broken. So we, the new door is with the side light. May not be all the way, but we have a side light. So, and it's old style. Nothing is like contemporary. So I try to keep, things, I need to stain it in the color, like the dark brown. So, but I just kept it the way it is for right now. The window is all done. I mean, it's all, I see the window here, but it's all kind of fixed. So all operable, and then roof replaced. That's the estate gray, so it's Supreme. But the porch in the back, it was not enclosed. It was enclosed with like glass pieces, nothing like just kind of like temporary things, not like it was always broken. Also, I just took it off, and then I just kept the railing. And yes, we took off the windows in the back. We actually we did the bathroom. This is a full bathroom. So. And I submitted submitted the information, I mean, like the drawing to the city before, but, so it's kind of like, they approved.
If you have permit approved drawings though, for all of these modifications?
No, I submitted and, I mean, like, I think we submitted to the city and we did all the job with permits and everything.
Do you have to have a copy of the approval?
I can get it from my mail, but.
What I'd like to do probably is continue the application to just get you the time and clarity to be able to provide staff the copies of the permits, the
Sure.
approvals, just to make sure there wasn't something issued out of sequence that has on rare occasion happened. So if you're amenable, we'd just continue this.
Sure. Thank you.
Next meeting is May 16th.
Right.
Yeah, did you do the tuck pointing on the column?
Yeah. Yeah, we did the tuck pointing, we did the chimney. I mean, I had some the things, that the city, that there was some missing window in the front, so we just rebuilt some, the windows and the dormer, and we did the tuck point. Actually, the fence, there was some question about the fence, but actually the fence is the neighbor fence that fell down, so we built it up for him, so it's,
What I would propose is simply before we scrutinize any work on the property, is just for the applicant to provide a copy of all the drawings and applications
Sure,
and your permits to Jacqueline. That way we can ascertain what was approved, what maybe potentially wasn't approved as well. If there's any work that was beyond
not a problem.
the scope of those permits, I think that's adequate. So that might be the best.
I mean, I'm done with the inspections. I mean, I have only like plumbing and final, but we did all
Happy
inspection.
to allow you the time on this.
You have an occupancy permit?
No, not yet. I'm waiting, to pass, and I have another plumbing there, and then table. I have electric, I have HVAC, just need the plumbing and tables.
So I just don't.
Yeah.
Let's give ourselves some time. Okay. So with your permission, we'll move it to the next agenda. If that's okay.
Okay, so I have, this is, okay, that's not a problem, but the problem that I have is with the city, because I refi this house. So they hold me $18,000, not a problem. So it's kind of like these things got mixed up between the historic and the city. So they are holding the money for the say, look, there's missing window, and there was a chimney tuck point before even we started with the historic. There's nothing to do with the historic. So they hold this money. Now the historic, so I spoke to Jill, and she was in court, like, and I said, okay, what this to do with that? I mean, you have to release my funds. It's all the violation that, be corrected. So just release my fund. So they said, no, it goes together. The HRC and the building court goes together. So why?
That's true.
Right, but if you have, if indeed all of the work you have done is already in permit, you received approvals completely from the city, and your drawings cover every single thing you did here, then,
I mean,
that's just a clear, if you can provide that proof to staff, then
okay.
then you probably won't be here next month.
Okay, no, the question is like about the gutters, so to speak, so there's no permit for gutters, so when we put it, and then that
Well,
can say,
there actually is a permit for gutters, so that's the issue, is any modification to the exterior of the house has to come before this
I
commission
understand that.
or receive staff approval. So if there are items that you did not receive approval on, you're gonna have to be really upfront and say, these are the things we did that did we.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I did, and I know that I have to do, is the roof. And then I follow the guidelines of the historic and the windows. So I didn't do anything, and I was always back and forth, I can do this, I can, ask some question. So nothing is done. But the rest, I didn't know that the gutters needs to be like asked for, like the color, and then the concrete, which what I did in concrete, whatever broken, we took off, we put the same thing. We didn't enlarge, we didn't do anything else. So I don't like just replace.
Make sure that you get approval, for anything that you've done already, like the gutters, if, that can probably staff approval, we need an application. And then for anything else, if you haven't done the work, you want to make sure you get approval before you started. And that way, once you have that COA, then you know you're good to proceed, or if you need a permit for that kind of work, you take that COA.
Okay. I mean, it's the first historic property that they do, so it's kind of like, I don't know how it goes.
So for, gutters, I've been on site for this property before, so I think we can probably staff approve that. So if that's something you need, you just submit an application form, we have our photos ready, and then issue that COA as a staff approval. So you would give council permission for gutters. For other items, like the doors and, the alterations to the addition, those are the bigger questions that we want to make sure whether you already had a permit for it. If you do, then it might be a moot point if they issue that error. If you don't have a permit, we need to discuss it with the commissioner.
Yeah, for the door, definitely not. So the question now, I have the hearing date in the city, April 30th. And now I have the agenda the next month. So I mean, like, I need your help with that, either to,
Well, we can't do anything more than offer anything as far as HRC approvals, we're just this commission.
Okay.
But if you're quickly providing all of your permit data
Okay,
based on if there's, you received a permit for all this work, even if it was an error. As soon as you get that to Jacqueline, she can sort through that pretty quickly
okay.
and determine if there's anything that was not permitted and if there's any component of that that needs to come back to us.
Now, as you mentioned that the doors don't need a permit, so that might be something we can discuss, tonight.
Yeah. So for example, if the doors were not shown on your permit drawings.
Yeah.
And you did go ahead and replace them, that is something we need to deal with approvals. So
Okay.
that is something that we do, again, anything that's an exterior alteration to this property would come before this commission.
Are you talking about this property particular because it's historic or in general property? Because
Anything that's in the district.
This historic, in any of the historic districts.
because again, as I say, I did maybe 30, 40 houses.
We only care about this.
Yeah, but this is the
Anything
first
that's in
time,
the district.
it's the first time I'm doing like historic. So, I thought only as I said, the windows and roof, and that's the important thing, but I didn't realize that, doors and gutter colors and stuff like that.
And again, we, our position is we have to follow guidelines, we have to
Yeah.
follow code.
Understand.
It's not whether you did good design or bad design. It
Understand.
becomes down to, is it historically appropriate, technically appropriate? And we have,
Yeah, I understand.
you could have a nice modern renovation that's put in a historic district, but receive no approvals and it doesn't fit.
I
You
understand.
cannot offer that approval. So, I don't know if we want to talk.
But in general, you think the door is not, it's not fit the area? I mean, like,
It does not address the transom at the top. It's missing the most critical element.
transom at the top, I went all the way to the top. The door is not, it's all the way to the top. There's no foot transom.
Bring up the historical picture for that.
We're just bringing up an old, is it evident in old Google?
Actually, yeah, if we go to the counter or that to, yes, you can see.
So you can see that there's a window right at the top of the door. While we agree the door below is not historic, and your proposal to replace it would generally be accepted, depending on the look of the door. The key thing is you've removed the transom at the top.
Mhm.
Okay. You have other glasses also, I mean, like windows, so, I know, I understand, yeah, I see it.
Also, I believe that we require that mortar to match the existing when you do tuck pointing.
Okay, this is,
And that mortar doesn't appear to be matching.
we
existing.
try to match as much as we could, yeah, you know what it is, sometimes it's twice, but we try
It's,
to match.
it is, I mean, I understand it is difficult to match mortar.
Yeah.
But it can be done. There are lots of mortar samples. You can correct that with stain. There are people that stain mortar to get a pretty good match.
And the only other concern I'd have is the type of mortar you've used, if you have any information on that. Because quite often, these older buildings need a softer,
Yeah, you know, the S type,
that rather than a more hard red.
yeah,
It's type gen.
it's S type, S type, I think,
Fence type is too hard.
yeah, so the N, not white.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, chimney is corrected, and whatever, where the problem with the chimneys.
So we'll continue, if you wouldn't mind getting information to Jacqueline.
Okay, sure.
And when is the, our date when you need it?
So for it to continue, you have extended deadlines, so you have a week from now, so let's say next Thursday. Normally the deadline would be on Friday, but since you're continued, you get an extra week.
Okay, so I'll be in touch with you kind of like maybe tomorrow, email and stuff like that.
Yes, it's fine, and you just send over email once you have it, and you
Can I be, can I have a business card? Can,
yes, so it's that same email that we've been
Okay.
going back and forth with, but I can. Hold it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
You should run a motion.
Sure.
I move to continue, 667, Linwood Avenue.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
So on email,
Having
this email.
Motion and having a second.
Yeah.
okay, that's all.
I just got the information. So, yeah.
Having a motion and a second, in this case, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes, case continued until next one. Jacqueline, which was the case that we originally skipped over?
So that was number 3. There
Yeah,
was
there's
all
something
those, the 587, 589, South Ohio. I haven't heard anything through that.
That's right. Nobody's still here for that. Okay, just checking. Okay, well then we are going to go on to case number 9, 528 Meyer Place. Meyer Place. If you could both raise your right hands. Do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony for the commission this evening?
Yes.
State your full name and association of the property for record.
Natalie Pettit, project manager with Rhoda.
Liz Meso, architect, MA design.
Jack.
Okay, this application for 528 Meyer Place is proposing exterior alterations, including a new concrete stair set at a new storefront entrance. The stair would have handrails with integrated lighting. The existing ADA ramp would remain. They'd be installing structural metal and then a enclosed mega frame to project from the existing masonry facade, and that frame would be illuminated. The storefront systems would be on either side of the entrance. Be installing metal and glass overhead door at the entry. The entry had a perforated metal screen with LED lighting. They'd be installing film to the existing storefront glass, installing an illuminated metal screen parapet at the roof, restriping the parking lot, adding a loading zone, installing raised planter beds to match the adjacent planter beds, and installing 2 trees to also match the existing. And there's also a conceptual component of this application to install new signage with dimensional lighting within that mega frame location. And staff has placed this as a conceptual component since the signage has not been finalized quite yet. And then I believe there might also be that discussion of if we should want to have whether that sign is part of the mega frame or it be considered separate with this location. Okay, and then, so jumping forward, this was previously reviewed conceptually at the February hearing, and so the applicant took some time to incorporate the commission's feedback and update the application. And then the primary concern of the commission feedback was the opening and whether that could be preserved with the original opening and integrated. So the applicant has to revise this mainly to address that primary concern. And so staff recommends approval of application HR 2404-020-528 Meyer Place in Brewery District with any all clarifications to be submitted to staff for review approval providing issuance of a certificate. And then staff recommends that the sign portion return for final review and approval at a future HRC meeting. So the basis of the staff recommendation is the City Code 316.13 standards for sign improvements, specifically letter A, and the standards for alteration 316.11, specifically numbers 1, 2, 5, 9, 10, 11, 12, and the guidelines for windows on pages 64 to 65, lighting on page 79, and then signage on page 72 to 73, as well as the amendments for guidelines regarding windows, doors, and the short design guidelines for signage, and more specifically, wall guidelines for signage, and that's pages 3.37 and 3.12. And with that, to remember the commission.
What would you like to add?
Just echoing that, the sign is not complete. It will not say museum. We just don't have that part finished yet. But we feel the rest of the design is, or application is representative of the design.
I have to say just one thing, which is thank you for taking several. It's
really good.
Revise the design.
Nice work.
There were some critical things in there that
Yeah.
actually, I think you did exactly what was in your findings.
Yeah, I particularly like that you're not proposing changing the openings, because that's, if we do it for one, then we do it for everybody. We've rarely done it, only under very special circumstances. So, yeah, I think it's a beautiful design also.
How far along are you in with your signage packet?
So the signage, the idea is still, like, I think we're gonna stick with these dimensional letters. The idea is more so that we're not ready to announce the name to the public.
Oh, okay.
That's like the main concern. So we'll come back, obviously following the guidelines that have been given.
How much time do you need?
I'm not entirely sure, on when that would be determined yet.
So it's basically what I'm getting at is procedural. So should we continue the whole thing? Should we break it into two parts, you know, to make sure you're on the agenda? Or you could just come back and resubmit the whole application for that if you want.
For just the sign portion?
Yeah.
That would be our preference.
Okay.
You know, we have all intention of meeting the sign requirements in the short north guidelines you mentioned and familiar with those. But you know, that would come much later, than the, rest of the.
Okay. Well, then we'll just perhaps consider along that line to extract any of those details and come back.
Yes.
to that.
Because we can simply pass it, or there could be a suggested motion to follow staff recommendation of this and simply.
And then we can carve out that piece, yeah. And then we don't say it, they just submit an application. Right. We just need to remove it from what we have existing, even though there's sort of an indication, we just need to revisit all that, make sure that it's clear in the motion.
Why don't you make the motion?
Sounds like this. Okay, for application HR hyphen 24-04-020. I would like to propose that the application as modified be accepted with the removal of any signage implications within the design work and submitted details of drawings you provided, and the applicant is coming back at a further date for that separate application.
I'll second. Having a motion and a second, Jacqueline, is that clear based on the original motion?
Yes.
You said, okay. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, passes.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Nice
you.
work.
And then before they go, does the commission want to provide any conceptual feedback on like the placement of the signage so they don't have that information when they, as they develop it?
I mean, I think that has a lot to do with what you're actually presenting. So, you know,
Okay.
maybe talking about 6 letters, what you want is 4 or
Yeah.
whatever. So
Until there's a full name there, I think it's going to change.
Yes.
we'll be
The
here.
location looks fine.
I think you're on the right idea.
Okay,
Okay.
great,
You've obviously seen the code, so.
Yes.
Perfect.
great.
Great.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 10, 615 South Champion Avenue. Is there any- If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony for the commission this evening?
I do.
If you could state your full name and association with the property for record.
John G. French, and I'm the property owner.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah.
So this is a conceptual application for 615 South Champion Avenue. The proposal is to install a park surface for a parking pad, to remove forest trees, noted that each are less than 12 inches power, and to install a river walkway with separate stones. So at the April 4th business meeting, the commission suggested that other landscape treatments be considered, such as other ground cover treatments or impervious material, as too much shade or lawn would not be sufficient reason to be able to improve the removal of the trees. I know that the concern is more of the power lines, we'll want to know different species of trees that are shorter, would replace that to avoid the loss of the tree canopy. The commission noted that they would need to have a compelling reason for removal of the trees. So the commission asked if the applicant could include the dimensions intended for the service walkway area on the site sketch or plan. I know that will help to understand the overall extent throughout the lot. And I said the tree locations and those proposed for removal will be included on the site plan. So in response to the business meeting feedback, the applicant has submitted an updated site plan that includes dimensions for the parking area, a stone walkway, and the tree locations. The applicant noted that they understand the tree portion may be unlikely to be improved, but they have indicated the trees that they would like to remove are better. So this is a conceptual application, so the staff recommendation is that the site feedback that can be utilized by the applicant to further refine the proposal for review at a future HRC meeting, so no action is required. The basis for the staff recommendation is the city code 316.93 standards for site improvements, specifically letter A. And that over the.
What the applicant, yeah.
Nothing at this time. We're here just to answer any questions and see how I can move forward.
The Looking at the site plan, the three that you've indicated there, for removal, I'm assuming on the south side, although there really isn't. I don't see a north or on drawing.
But it's the south.
It is.
It is.
Side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that the one that had the pretty good sized trimming right against the fence?
That's actually,
Yeah.
that's the northern side, so that's the one that stands by itself. The
Yeah.
photo on the right, those are the three trees that stand next to the fence.
Right, and those three, you're requesting to be removed because of the power lines, is that my understanding?
Yep, so if the ground conditions is not valid, that's fine. If you see off to the right, the power lines that approach the house from the street cut through that area. It's actually my neighbor's trees that are there as well. You can actually see it's well, I don't actually see in that photo, but it bends around one of the tree branches. I can trim them too. If you guys don't want me to take them down, I understand that, but
And that power line just supplies power to the home?
to my house, yes.
Yeah, okay, and the one on the north side, why are you requesting that one to be removed?
Half is missing.
What?
Half the top is missing there. All those branches are trimmed off.
Oh, okay.
And it's just,
Fortunate.
it kind of just sits there. It doesn't look that great.
What, do you know what species that is or any idea of the?
I don't. The ones on the right, those are like the sumac trees that were like overgrown weeds, and you leave them there in the house. Yeah, a bunch of trash when I moved and stuff like that. I think people kind of just left them there. The one on the right, or the one on the left that sits by itself, I'm not sure what that is.
These are almost like scrub or weed trees. I'm not a landscape architect, but.
They are.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe, and then feedback would be to provide the species of the trees that you want to omit. I understand they're below 12-inch caliper. I would suggest maybe some replacement thoughts of how you can get those to be in a better location and maybe better trees, and then I think that would be an appropriate solution.
So just replacement trees,
Yeah,
put the trees you want where you want them.
right.
Right. So I'm not hearing any necessary objection to the proposal of the removal of those 4 trees, just come up with a plan for some new ones.
For new ones. Gotcha.
Yeah, I would suggest shade trees on ornamental trees where there's not power lines. So, yeah, of the trees.
Prefer.
Utilities, they can.
Right.
But
Yep.
in this application, he's only requesting removal, so we're approving removal because he hasn't, was,
What's consensus?
This is conceptual.
it's just conceptual, okay. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I would strike any language about removing trees because of shade and those types of issues.
Sure. Yep. Got it.
So I would be this daring to say, could we actually move this from conceptual to providing a motion of approval to remove the 4 trees with the 4 new trees to be located in staff approved?
Oh, sure.
Good. There's a lot going on.
Thought. It's one piece.
How soon do you want to get moving on your project? Soon, better? Yeah.
Yep. So the stone walkway is probably what I'll start with first because I have the funds for that. I prefer to get the concrete parking or asphalt, whichever, to put down before the winter. The way it is, I've kind of got under control right now with that photo. That's the winter time. It gets really chewed up. And I only park a little Buick there.
It's,
It gets pretty bad.
break it up parts. So basically, if we were to look at this and consider, for example, the trees and so forth, that'll give you, if we do sort of a contemporary or like a temporary consideration of moving that part forward, it gives you a chance to look at your site plan, consider where you're gonna put the trees, what you want to put in, and put that back in the new drawing file. So that way we kind of at least keep it, and then you can have some things to do and, put that plan in motion. And you'd mentioned that the pad is probably your most
Well,
piece down the road, or
I can do the stone walkway right now. The concrete pad, I'll probably have to get the money together for it. But my plan is to have it done before the next one.
so the other piece of the puzzle too is a lot of these things are a timing issue. So I think
Yep.
within the application, you'll have a big window of getting that done. Are you thinking within the whole year, within a year from application, you'll try to have everything wrapped up, or?
That'd be great.
Okay.
So we could,
I mean, it's proposed, the stone is pretty clearly proposed in here too, the product, so.
Pretty complete for conceptual. Suggestions.
So maybe just come back on a concrete pad.
yeah, I guess, I prefer to see more formal proposal myself and prove everything then, but I understand when break some pieces out. But if there is gonna be a formal proposal, then
I think
I
that.
think I'd like to see it holistically about what the actual proposal is with the trees, with everything.
Sort of final.
That would be my preference, but,
Will the concrete pad require a drawing for zoning or other departments here?
Yeah, so zoning will require, the drawing for the parking pad, and you'll want to basically have a preliminary review where you submit it to zoning, and then they provide feedback of, is it the dimensions meet the zoning requirements? And it might, or they might have like some moderate suggestions, and so we'll want to get that before we're able to approve it.
Gotcha.
But if it sounds like the parking pad, like the concept itself, is fine with the commission, so that when you come back for action review, we'll just want to have those zoning comments and then the drawing for the parking pad. And zoning will have specific asks for like what they want labeled on the parking pad. So you'll just come back and you can use that same drawing and provide to them.
understood. You get those as clean enough to make some.
I feel like there's pieces of this that we don't, I feel like the stone walkway and trees.
You can get us back there,
things that
Alan.
could be
That can come back, yeah,
delegated to staff. And
Well,
concrete pad comes back.
yeah, I think like the tree locations are important and where they fit in your site plan is important. So like the stone walkway might be where you want to plant trees in your plan, so.
You have a proposed
Yeah.
area where you want the walkway. Is that changed?
No, that's, and I appreciate the idea that trees may end up going there. That walkway, that's where I'd like that to go, because that's where the pre-existing is, the way the fence is built with the
Okay.
doorway, that's probably not gonna change. And to be honest with you, my intent is more likely to work with the trees and live with them. I don't need them that bad, take them away, so I'll probably roll them where they are.
And the property is 30 feet wide, so probably don't want too many trees because you're keeping that one already.
Yep,
So just to clarify, you just want to keep all.
I'm just gonna roll with the trees,
Okay.
we're good.
Okay, so those just cannot come out of the application. We're just talking about hardscape then.
So at the end of the day, it'll be the stone walk and the concrete pad.
Okay.
How soon do you want to put in the walkway?
That one I can do pretty much right away within the next, I mean, if I had time, I'd do it this weekend, but yeah.
Sweep old trees and then, do a item where staff would be at the final call on your final drawings. You would have to submit exactly what it is. And if you're gonna leave the trees, change what you have, which might be as easy as revising slightly what you have. Anything at all as far as details need to be in the site plan for staff, but that would perhaps be a condition of a temporary measure to kind of break that up. And then maybe we do something later where you come back for the pad, or we could break it into, we could pull the pad completely out and you could resubmit.
Let's do a separate application for the pad.
Any motion of approval tonight, though, because this was conceptual, it's just a beginning of approving anyway, so we can just leave the concrete pad in conceptual review. We don't even have to break it apart.
It's true.
Only provide motion for what we would approve.
However you'd like to do it, or we could continue the whole thing.
No, I mean, if I can get approval for the stone walk, I'd take that.
I think that's a better option.
Sure. You ready?
Sure. Yeah. Who wants to try to do it?
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve for application HR-24-04-021 for approval of the stone walkway improvements within the backyard area only.
What about this?
And the tree removal to be omitted from the application and those trees to remain as is.
That is moving it from conceptual to a final approval.
Correct, yes.
Second of that.
Second.
Having a motion and a second. Any clarity required by staff?
The only thing that I might want to add to that is that it's contingent upon getting the corrected drawings to.
Yes.
Prior to the.
Yeah, contingent upon corrected drawings.
Seconded then.
Having a motion and a second, any further discussion, any clarity required?
So are we're omitting, the company parking pads just for the walkway?
It'd be, to be clear from the motioner, the
Yes.
concrete parking pad is remaining in conceptual review.
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions? Motion passes. Just come back on the concrete pad.
Yes, sir.
Follow up with staff on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll send, a certificate of approval for the walkway in like 3 to 5 business days.
Okay.
And then as well as the feedback just for the application in general. And then if you want to submit, an application for the parking pad, you can do so. We have set a deadline for some Thursday, or if you need more time.
Fair enough. Thank you.
But again, it's make sure you get her the revised drawings, so take the pad off of it, I'm gonna cut the trees down off, that kind of thing.
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Thank you.
Temporarily jumping back to just find out, there's some new additional people in the room. Are either of you here for 587, 589 South Ohio Avenue? No. Okay. We're going to continue on our way here on to case number 12-1551 Brighton Road. Great. Raise your right hand. Each swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening.
I do.
I do.
You can state your full name and association with the property for record.
Alexander Stoyan Daskalov. I am architect of record for the company.
Anuja Bharari, I work with Alex at Frank Goff Messias Shop Architects.
Okay, wonderful.
Our client may be here around 5:30, but we were looking at that timeline based on the agenda that was published, so.
Wait.
We're fine to move forward and we can share.
Okay. Jack.
This is an application for 1551 Grand Road. It is conceptual application proposing the modification of existing ground floor window at the primary rearward elevation to become a new egress or access door for future assembly space. The applicant has provided 2 options for commission feedback, including option A, which is removal of large trees, embankment, the entirety of the existing retaining wall, and to install additional curb behind existing stone curb to create a patio space. And then option B would be removal of large trees, the earth embankment, just the section of the retaining wall, and the installation of the curb behind the existing stone curb to create the patio space. So for background, 1551 Brighton Road was constructed for use originally as St. Anne's Fertility Hospital in the early 1900s and appears on the base real estate atlas in 1910. And then that building was expanded, which is shown on the 1920 atlas and the 1921 Sanborn. So the building operated historically as an infant Salem and home for unwed mothers and was staffed by the Sisters of St. Francis, who also ran St. Vincent's orphanage across the street. The building was again modified by the late 1950s to a more mid-century style, so you can see in the 1960s photo materials. So this is conceptual review, so the staff recommendation is that the commissioner should offer design feedback that can be utilized by the applicant to further refine the proposal or review at a future interest meeting, so no action is required. The basis for the staff recommendation is the City Code 316.11 standards for alteration, specifically numbers 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, and 12, as well as the City Code 316.13 standards for site improvements, specifically letter A.
Would the applicant like to add anything before we have our dialogue?
I don't believe so. That was a good summary.
Okay.
Happy to add any feedback as you have questions.
Putting it up to here.
Do you know if the retaining wall was original to the project? Or was that added after initial construction?
So the retaining wall, it does not appear in the, this photos are 1930, so it doesn't appear on that one. It does appear on the 1960s photo. So it was added sometime in, early 20th century between those two time periods.
So by 1960, it was there, so long before the industry.
Yeah, so green up on screen and then see the, I think it says 1965.
This building's one of those mishmashes of evolution.
Right,
modernization.
Right. It shows the evolution of style in an urban area. At least the urban ones. All of them buildings.
Could the applicant describe a little bit more in detail the differences between the options? It sounds like there are a couple thoughts that you guys have. I'm just curious about what you guys see as the pros and cons of each of the options.
Certainly. So the current owner took possession a little less than a decade ago. They have been trying to make incremental improvements inside the building to make it more attractive to tenants. They have been having some challenges with occupancy. So they're looking for a bigger impact move that would make the building more attractive overall. One of the items that they're considering is adding a plaza, which could lead to a future cafe or public social space within the ground floor of the building. So in order to make that happen, right now there's a fair amount of earth that is built up against the building that would prevent that. So we're looking at different ways to provide a small patio seating area. Initially, the owner has been having challenges maintaining the retaining wall. So his preference would be to take it out, have a clean plaza all the way to the edge, provide a place for seating and eating or gathering.
The wall's deteriorating.
The wall is not in great. You can see some photos. These are recent photos from within the year. So certainly tuck pointing, the stone itself may be able to be salvaged. If the earth behind it is removed, we'll probably know more about the full condition of it. But that was the initial thought. And then the alternate proposal would also look at adding a plaza, but maintaining the pieces of the wall that we could as a freestanding wall to maintain some of that character of the place and kind of screen between those two spaces. So both of these proposals include the removal of a large pine, which is extremely close to the building. Both of them include the modification of an existing window within the masonry frame to be extended down vertically to meet the ground plane and become a door. It's not currently needed for egress, but if this was transformed into a cafe in the future, as the owner intends, we would need that as a means of egress and a separate lockable access point into that space. So that's the genesis of this proposal. That's some of the background of what we got here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we have permitted tree removal when it's close to foundations and when it's causing damage to the building. And so I think we could be consistent with what we've done in the past. The changing of an opening is a little bit more problematic in that it's currently not needed. However, we're being converted to a restaurant. Then there'd be a case that would say that do need it for health and safety, which we have permitted in the past on issues of health and safety. The changing of an opening. So it's a little chicken and the egg here. I guess you can't get a restaurant unless you have a space for the restaurant. So buildings in other historical districts that were being renovated for become restaurants. I think we have permitted at times alterations to be made to those with the idea that they were certain to become commercial uses. Not sure whether they had already selected tenants.
I can offer a little bit more context on that. The owner is hoping to take some of these early steps to be more attractive to a tenant. And again, there's some flexibility in terms of he does not currently have a specific tenant lined up, but he would like to reach out to some of the cafes that are in the neighborhood and see if they would be willing to have a location there.
So does this require a zoning change or a variance of some sort of?
There is a current variance in place. I don't know
Right.
if you have the specifics.
Yeah, there's a current variance in place which was passed in 2019. And zoning requirements, yes, certainly if there will be a change of use or whatever the tenant owner decides that which tenant is coming in, at that point, we would be applying for a change of use. And zoning wise, I don't think there's an.
There is I don't think there would be a major parking impact with this. But again, it is a change of use, so that would have to be reviewed. The current variance allows for mixed use in the lower level to include a barber shop and
Yeah.
That's the 19.
29.
2019.
Yes.
There are several different uses that are allowed in the current variance, which is in force. However, they do not include a cafe. So that would need to be a separate step taken.
Having, knowing the Bryan Road corridor fairly well, and even just the number of cases we've heard in proximity to this particular property, you know, all the lawns we've dealt with, the landscaping requests, retaining wall requests, on and on. I guess I'm sort of struggling with the eradication of the rest of the green lawn that's mounted up here. I do understand that the kind of the pole-in area was a mid-century modification and drop off that was added to this building as part of its history. But once you sort of take out this mounding that exists from the main entryway going left out to the corner, and kind of further removes more of what is a historic feature of the district. The longer Bryan Road corridor, you look down it, is all about this mounded green lawn up to these houses and buildings around it. So I just don't know how appropriate putting a cafe patio out in front of this thing really is when we've already got a drop-off roof that was a modification, but is now acknowledged. We've got a road or an alleyway piece driveway here. We've got sidewalks, and now we're gonna be adding more street to it. It's now like a commercial plaza or, it's this cafe plaza piece out front. And to me, that just doesn't fit the character of the Bryan Road district, which is primarily homes. So I kind of struggle with the global concept here that's resulting in the other changes, but I'm just one opinion here.
I think the other piece to keep in mind as well, to consider an opening that's a historic opening to convert to a larger opening is very unusual. That's something that we would consider without extreme circumstances, particularly on different elevations. This is a pretty exposed elevation, so to speak. You're going to have a lot of traffic coming to this side of the building all the time. That would be another concern that I would have of removing that window to extend that opening to create that opening that you need for the cafe in the building. I don't think the trees I think they have grown significantly larger than they were probably intended to be for that particular spot. I think they're probably going to cause more harm to the building. So I would support perhaps two of the trees being put somewhere else on the grounds and removing those.
Additionally, I would, by the way, just to justify or verify visually what I was referring to, if you go to page number 12, which is an image looking towards across the street, you can see the mounding of the lawn across the street. as it leads up to the front porch and steps of the house. That is the character of the district down the entire length of right. So if the commission supports removal of this, I would say, does this open up precedent for when neighbors have requested flattening or removing sections of this mounting out that we have heard before here? So I'm just thinking about the precedent set.
Was the original photo, I know we talked about the retaining wall being something that was added pre-1960. Are there any thoughts from the commission about the condition prior? I'm not sure if that mounding was there originally historically. It was.
Yeah, there's a really old photo in here that shows you how the big lawn was. It's further in this packet here.
I see.
Right there. So there's your big mountain.
Understood. So your argument's more along the lines that this is a remnant of some of that historical fabric, right? Understood.
And just to unpack the wall a little bit more, so if it is freestanding, that's a pretty significant change to that structure of that wall. So I just want to kind of hear your thoughts on how that could work. And then if your option 2, what does the elevation of the building look like without that whole front area? How do you treat that? Because you're exposing 3 or 4 feet of elevation there.
Right, yeah, that is accurate. So we are looking at, again, essentially a 1 foot thick stone retaining wall, which has a curved shape to it, which would help it be stabilized. We have talked with a structural engineer about whether that's viable or not. Obviously, it's not in condition to do that if you just take the dirt out, but if it's pointed, it has enough mass and shape to be self-supporting and kind of maintain that that look from the exterior while providing a flatter spot beyond. Again, this is a conceptual review, so we are interested in hearing your feedback on how this could work. But what we're showing currently is we're showing an opening indicated in red where a section would be removed, the rest of the wall stabilized, and then the 3rd window down on the right side becoming a full height door. So the view of that opening from the street would not be drastically changed from the view of that opening as it currently exists. By maintaining that screen wall, potentially with planters beyond it to echo what was behind it before, could free up some additional usable space that currently is not in use. In terms of the material that exists below that stone sill, it is concrete. As the building turns around the corner, that concrete is currently exposed. We did a little bit of a test dig to confirm, and it is concrete all the way down without any odd footings. So we do believe that it goes all the way down there, and we would be open to suggestions in terms of whether cladding would be more appropriate on that existing concrete, or if it would be best to leave it exposed. We'd be flexible.
Do you have an image of, you said that it is exposed as it turns the corner?
Yeah, if you go to the one that shows the historic stone curb, as you go a little bit further around the corner, you can kind of see a little bit there of the concrete below the sill, but there's one more image that's a little further around the corner. I think there's one more. There it is. Yeah, so you can kind of see as that building emerges from the earth. Yeah, right. So it is below that sill, it's concrete. That concrete is already exposed on a separate facade. So we wouldn't be drastically changing the character of that portion of the building.
You just have to, I think Commissioner brings up a good point about this. We don't know what we're going to find once that earth gets pulled away. Concrete could be in poor condition. Same thing with that retaining wall. I don't know if that was built with one side in mind, so we pull away the earth, what are we going to find on the other side? What kind of condition? What's it actually going to take to maintain that wall? So just some things for us to consider about the overall aesthetics of what conditions might be left over after 60 plus years of having earth up next to it. But I do appreciate that you provided this image here that shows there is some precedent for that being exposed historically.
And just one more question about the kind of full front entry. So the existing drop off that's all staying as in your proposal. Just wanted to make sure we understand that.
Correct. So everything that is proposed to be modified is indicated in the drawings. There are two existing entries right now. The one that's shown on the left of this image is the entrance for apartment. And then the one on the right is entrance into the mixed use area at the ground floor. But it's it's segregated from that left side where we're hoping to put a cafe. So because apartment tenants are coming in that door, we can't use that door all the way to the right to access a cafe separately. The two are split.
That's a plus.
How does the commission feel about the demo of the remaining retaining wall that's now part of the historic fabric? Sometimes I feel like those modifications, if there's a compelling reason to remove that redevelopment plan, that makes sense. I mean, this just seems like we're proposing demo of the wall just because they don't want to be maintaining it.
We have allowed some retaining walls to be removed where they had been inappropriately built, even though they were built before the district. But yeah, there's a number of homes, and there's one home that built this concrete retaining or cinder block retaining wall. Where all the other ones have a sloping lawn, and even though it was built, a few years prior to the area becoming a historical area, we have allowed those at times to restore it to continuity of the neighborhood when the condition of those walls were such that they were falling apart. So the original lawns were restored. This is a little different case. I think it's a little harder because it looks like this building had a sloping lawn going down prior to the driveway coming in there. In this case, if you remove the retaining wall, you're not restoring the lawn going down to the street. So it's not like you're restoring the original situation. You're in fact exposing the concrete foundation, which originally had never been exposed. So that's different from the earlier precedences. Because it's just being removed, it's not being restored here.
So if there were a removal with the intent of restoring back to some of the original conditions, that would be more compelling.
Yeah, which would mean they'd have to take the drive out, which I don't
green lawn back, maybe?
Yeah, which I don't think they want to do.
Right.
I don't think they would be in their plan because the center infill piece there, I mean, the 50s brought it down. That's their main door. I mean, you'd almost have to sort of or move the thing back to what it was originally built. I don't think the plans do. Right. But if that were, that'd be something. It'd be an interesting thing to consider, perhaps. Right.
So I think as for giving this applicant, this is conceptual review, solid guidance. I think what's critical here is to determine what your use variances might need to be. There's other components that will have to come forward, change of use, any zoning matters. Will the cafe with seating out front trigger parking issue, other things here. So I think almost I would suggest that you probably need to pursue a lot of fleshing out those components though. So we're not evaluating design that doesn't have the use tied to it really yet. That's a kind of a critical point to sort of bring up here. I think we've got a lot of feedback on this
And there's no action.
From
It's-
various points of view, so. But
The owner struggled a little bit with the chicken and egg problem that you alluded to, where they want to present this in a way that somebody who's a potential tenant can see it and can understand, okay, I'm coming in with a relatively low threshold, but I understand what you're saying. Until you know exactly what it's going to be.
I go back to, if it's a cafe tenant, now is it an outside tenant? Do you need signage? Are we talking then about signage on the building? What other things start to come out of it, right? Exterior lighting. There is a mile long list of things that then sort of rolls down. So I think we've given a fair amount of opinion on where you are today. I just think there needs to be more detail put into it. It's not like, strip vanilla box retail or something here. I think, this is a very contextually appropriate place, right? I think clarifying the cafe idea, is that a retail tenant basically, and what does that mean, right, we just want to understand that better. And then I think just on the facade, I think modifying the building facade is tricky, right? What does that mean? Yeah. So I think I'm most concerned about that personally.
And if it's reduced to just taking the trees and putting two other ones on the property, then that's fine too.
Yeah, in terms of trying to find a current local cafe owner who would come into the ground floor, I think this is partially intended to support the apartments above. So it's less of a branded marketing center front approach, but I don't have any detail in terms of what they would need or want for signage.
Public use.
It is still intended to be
I
a
can
public use.
Walk in
correct.
from the street and buy a sandwich. That's what I'm.
It would be a both and,
Okay.
right? So
Okay.
intended to make the place better for those who are tenants in the apartments, but also open to the public to walk in the door. Right.
How important is it to have the outdoor seating? I mean, not every restaurant has outdoor seating.
It's not a very large place inside the spot that we are looking at. It could accommodate a small cafe. I think part of having that outdoor seating was hoping to enliven the building and make it more attractive so that people might say, oh, wouldn't that be nice to live there? And then I could just go down and grab a cup of coffee and sit out there and watch traffic go by on Bright. Right. So I think that was the start of the discussion. That was one of the things that the owner wanted to accomplish. So again, it's a little different if you have to enter the apartment door and then find the door into the cafe and somebody squirreled away there, but it's not really interacting with the street. So
I kind of go back to, this body would be requested to support probably the variances. And, knowing the Bryan Road District is largely historic, if this were a blank lot, Bryan Road District would be support for retail use coming in on a largely residential district. And what are the implications of that as well? Not to say, the applicant couldn't do what they want inside of the building anyways, regardless, but just the character and the change of this parts on the corridor. Again, the larger contextual picture, not site specific. Look at a couple block radius, everything else here, left and right of this is nothing but houses. So is this the right thing? I still would recommend we kind of just let the applicant come back with more definitive use parameters. So knowing what we have here or what's really required to be successful.
Do you think there are, just for the applicants thing, but I definitely hear what you're saying about making sure we understand the variances and what's all entailed, but is there any feedback you think we could give to the applicant in terms of non-starters? So they could maybe start to weigh some things out. That if I were sitting in their shoes, I think I'd want to walk away from this meeting knowing like what is off the table, or are we not willing at this point? I just heard some very strong feedback from a couple folks about is this even appropriate for the street? So personally, I would consider various options, but I'm just curious if there are others that are feeling like that there wouldn't be support.
Use outside, I struggle with removal of the retaining walls that have been proposed. And mounting, you know, if I take the use part out of it.
Well, and you've already had the 19 zoning change, which included service-oriented things, maybe to support the building. That could be modified perhaps to include an indoor cafe that could support that as well. I see where you're going. If we're gonna do it indoors, we might as well stretch it to the community. I still think there's value perhaps to have that within the building, if that's your goal, impacting the way that we need to remove historic fabric and design elements within that community and that landscape plan from that original community development. I would support that. So that's the real trick that we're kind of getting into, because it wasn't designed for that per se. So now we have a residential area that now perhaps has lovely opportunities for people that are on foot to come in, but now we have perhaps higher traffic with vehicular traffic and that sort of thing, which creates a whole nother set of, exhaust, lights, noise, all that other business too, which isn't terrible, but to keep in mind, how many people would this really service, and perhaps considering your tenant's use.
Yeah, I guess just more globally on your site, I would just think about how you can best utilize what other area you have to maybe accomplish some of these things. Like there's some lawn area to the left side of this drawing. I don't know, I'm just asking that question because we're kind of focused on one small area.
There is the rest of the front of this building. And
Right.
what happened, there's an entire side street as where you can see it goes onto a corner. Maybe this is a side use or something like that. I feel like we've zoomed in on a small piece.
That's what I'm, just kind of talking about the broader site plan.
It's a really difficult building.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those transitional type buildings that developed over a long time. In order to change opening size, we've always had to have really compelling reasons. And those reasons have almost always been life safety issue. And granted, that argument could be made if it were a restaurant. And I understand the problem is it's not a restaurant, but you want it to be a restaurant. So that's a little bit of difficulty, because what if you tear out the window and it never becomes and now it's, it becomes the service entrance to take the trash out or something. And so there almost needs to be some real reason, not a potential reason. So I started with that. The retaining wall was a retaining wall. When you take what it's retaining out from behind it, is it retaining? If you change the nature of it such that now you really create a fence, and then you're also proposing taking a piece of it out. So now we just end up with a fragment. Trying to think of if we've allowed that in the past, and I can't really think of precedents where we have allowed part of a structure to be moved and a fragment left. So I would have to look at what's been done in the past, be consistent with what we're doing. So I think to convince us it's going to be an uphill battle with some real evidence as to why this needs to be done.
So I just have a question. So I understand where we are going right now, but if we come back saying, okay, we have determined what the change of use will be or what kind of tenant is going in, and we have enough justification why a opening is needed there or why a exterior patio is needed there. In that case, what would be your feedback, or would that be supported? Would that thought be supported? So the reason for our conceptual submission is to just understand if this project is even viable or not. Right?
Yeah.
So if we take the next step, we just need to have that sense of understanding, will that be considered? Or it's going to be still not possible.
I mean, we are, well, one thing I want to make sure is we are not your designers and your architects, and we're not the applicants, so you have to propose what you guys. We cannot sort of require you to do anything. I think you have to present that to us. Additionally, because, you know, we're a voting body, we don't have, you know, we may not be unanimous in our thoughts here, so you may hear inconsistencies between each of the five folks here.
Yeah.
On what they're all.
I am hearing some strong reservations on a number of issues, though. Moving further away from the historical nature of what that area was, specifically removing fragments of the retaining wall, exposing portions of the building that weren't previously exposed, creating a one-sided retaining wall, potentially an issue, change of use. There's just a lot of things I think that we're all maybe a little bit hesitant. And I think we've given a lot of feedback around those items. I think maybe if you were to push it forward, more detail about all of that could be more compelling, but as others have said, it does feel a little bit like an uphill climb to me right now.
Yeah, because even if you make a convincing argument for a opening being larger, you still then have the problem of the retaining wall and removing everything behind the retaining wall. So those are really kind of separate issues, because I mean, it'd be possible to make an opening larger on the side and on the back of the octagon without changing the historical front. So it's, yeah.
It is,
There's a lot
as
of
you
issues
said,
here.
it's a building that's gone through a lot of transitions. There is the major mechanical for the building sits just past that octagonal window or the hexagonal bay. So that is not a viable location for access. There's a drive that goes to the parking lot in the back on that side. So that particular side is challenging.
We, you know, even if a design might be challenging, it doesn't mean it's contextually right or appropriate for the historic district. I think it's part of the issue is, yeah, within the guidelines that we are given to look at a building and its impact and what the change being part on the district or on the property is what we kind of have to stay with.
Understood. So the trees, it sounds like are not an issue, but it sounds like in order for you to consider this again, our next steps, if we do discuss with our client and determine that he would like to move forward, we would need another conceptual review with more detailed information on specifically what we would like to do and how that would impact the elements that we talked about.
You can request a full review at any time.
Yeah.
It's just whether the package will be thorough enough to actually make a motion on. I definitely hands down think that most of us would not want to see an overgrown tree destroy a historic building. So I think most of us would be advocating for some form of, you know, considering planting a new tree or two somewhere and advocating pretty quickly on a old tree, especially if it's damaging the building or historic barrier.
But you have to make that case, right? I mean, you have to state why it's being removed. And in the past, we have a lot when they were damaging buildings.
So do you think you got enough feedback at this time?
I believe so.
Okay, great. And you are more than welcome to ask for additional conceptual feedback to additional conceptual reviews. I don't want to think that you can't receive more, you can have as many of those as you want.
And if the purpose changes into another portion of the building, by all means, you can resubmit details. We'll go through that.
Thank you.
Process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Which are application in the report?
Here's the attorney.
Oh, okay. Okay.
There was another gentleman I thought walked in, did now.
If we could just take about a 2-minute break for recess here at 5:41 PM in restrooms.
I join you.
Slide.
Chairs.
Yeah.
Okay. Randy?
No.
You sit right here. Okay, good. You. Perfect. Switch. So, you ain't here. Oh.
Landscape stuff over. Maybe do that.
Yeah. What's the people weather for?
Yeah. I heard. And, get it going a little bit. Yeah.
So that's kind of cut it wood.
Right.
Put the lawns. So. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, someone's here, best,
I don't think patch grass and it's heavy. Yeah, very much. Push through.
oh, yeah.
So it's
That's what we're talking about, in the city of these rules. Yeah, that's all good, and that's all right.
yeah, and then you take a little, get some exercise. Everybody good? Yeah.
Yeah. And we will call this meeting back to order here at 5:43 PM. Thank you for your patience. If each of you could raise your right hand. Do you each
Just stand.
Yeah. Do you each swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening?
Yeah. Thank you.
Start at this end, just state your full name and association with the property for record.
Randall Sistrunk, and I'm with the media company Orange Barrel Media.
Michael B. Coleman, attorney to Orange Barrel Media.
Randy Black, preservation consultant to the team.
Amanda Miller, Orange Barrel Media.
Thank you. Jack.
This application for 517 Park Street, a conceptual application, proposals for a digital billboard. So they'll be installing a new billboard with a curved digital screen and 3-inch metal trim at the top and sides on the west elevation of the AC hotel. That'd be per the submitted drawing. So that appears to be similar to the alternate design number 2 from the June 2023 review. So the upper section measuring 52 feet in height and 23 feet in width would include general advertising with some limited time provided for artists and community content, North Market nonprofits and tenants, and AC hotel advertising. So the lower section measuring 2 feet in height and 23 feet in width would include a new company identification with 1-inch internally illuminated push-through letters. So an application for conceptual review for exterior work was reviewed at the June 2022 HRC hearing, as well as the March 17th, 2022 HRC hearing. So the Department of Building and Zoning Services has determined that the applicant would need to seek council variances for code sections 3359.17 B4 and 3380.102 to allow the use. So in this case, this application is for conceptual review. It says there are variances that the Department of Building and Zoning has identified. Staff recommends that the commission provide an advisory recommendation on the use to city council and with more specific input on the design pending until such time that the use is reviewed and approved by the city council. So in the staff report is also included the past feedback from the prior conceptual reviews. And overall, since this is a conceptual review, the staff recommendation is that the commission provide that advisory recommendation and so pause on the design pending until the advisory is reviewed and approved by city council. No action is required since this is a conceptual review. The basis for the staff recommendation is the city code 316.13 standards for site improvements, specifically letter C. The city code 3380.102 I-670 area of special graphics control. And the CC 3359.17 B4 for permitted, prohibited, and uses permitted only by certificates of appropriateness. and the zip code for 303.02 regarding definitions for letter B. And the guidelines for signage on pages 72 to 73. The short design guidelines for signage, pages 3.37 and 3.41. And then that also moves in particular panel signage and wall sign guidelines. And with that, I'll give it over to the commission.
Wonderful, thank you. This is definitely a little different than I think we've had for applications in the past. So I'd like to.
Do you have any trees to remove?
I will turn it over here to the applicant to go through this pretty thoroughly. Prior to the commission sort of responding, I may have a question or two just for staff as well. Because this is, again, unique recommendation from staff. I just want to understand staff's position and you know, what an advisory recommendation would entail from our body. So, but we'll turn it over to the applicant first to provide any additional presentation because you've obviously got a lot of material here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name is Michael Coleman. I represent the applicant, Orangeboro Media. And as you see, this is a unique, one-of-a-kind sign here that, frankly, what we view as important to the city. As you know this very well, during COVID, downtown was evacuated. It was vacated. It has been a struggle coming back. But the city and the community have stacked hands. And post-COVID, there has been an intentional effort to bring people back downtown. And this particular location being a gateway to the downtown area, providing visitor information. And this area is now a destination. So we were here a couple of years ago, and a lot has happened between then and now in this very district. We have nearby, within a stone's throw, almost literally within a stone's throw, 32-story mixed-use development called the Merchant Building, and a reimagined North Market area as well. Our hope is that will drive attention to the area. But North Market has lots of small businesses that struggle to survive. And you'll hear more about what the proposal is, but our goal is to make them more viable by giving them opportunity to be on this side on a regular basis. In addition, a new Hilton was built. I don't know how many stories that is, but that's nearby as well. Also, not too far away is the municipal light plant. It's really by Bird, over about a mile away, actually, and Lower.com. All these, both of these areas kind of work together in many ways. So, so a couple of things I want to point out is, first of all, the whole area has changed dramatically since this first came to the commission a couple of years ago. Secondly, we view this, and I think a lot of people view this as the gateway to Columbus, to the downtown area. We want to invite people back. Thirdly, we have reached out to individuals and organizations in the area. And as part of the package are, I would say, very important letters of recommendation and support. One coming from Experience Columbus, whose goal it is to bring people to downtown. And I just want to point out a couple of things in their letter, that they support this because of the goal of enhancing the visitor experience downtown, and to support major events and conferences and visitors to the downtown area. This is a key gateway to the North Market Historic District, and to downtown. So that's why Experience Columbus supports it. North Market supports it for those reasons and frankly more. North Market provided a letter of support on this because this sign will be a valuable tool to promote North Market, its businesses, and its tenants and its merchants, giving it much needed visibility and an opportunity to succeed when otherwise they might not have that. Difficult, very, very difficult in this environment to get people pointed towards merchants in the area, small businesses. Because Orange Barrel Media is committing at least 5% of its annual screen time on the sign to the North Market Historic District nonprofits, including the tenants, at no cost. And this is an opportunity not just to visit downtown, but for those businesses that are already downtown that frankly struggle. And we want to make sure that they succeed. This is a good thing for the city, a good thing for bringing people back downtown. One thing I just want to point out, and we're going to point it out over and over again, and that this sign is not a part, it is a part of the non-historic addition to the building, number one. And number two, it points out, not inward, towards the district. And that's important to point out as well. And it's the part of the building that has been added on to an historic building a couple of years ago. I'll turn this over to my colleagues.
Hello, Chair and members of the commission. Thank you for seeing us. It's been a while. I probably got a lot more gray hair and gained about 20 pounds.
We can say the same.
I just wanted to give a quick overview of Orange Barrel. I know you guys have heard it, but we have a couple of new members, and I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about our company. So this year we celebrate 20 years in the outdoor advertising space, headquartered here in Columbus, Ohio. You guys probably remember the signs we had where we had paint spilling down the wall into the parking lot. Probably know our Rogue Fitness signs, the big static sign, and Rogue and Apple sign we have on our headquarters. But we've actually grown and scaled and developed to become the largest privately held outdoor media company in the entire country. Our elevated design, our community-oriented approach is key to the success of Orange Barrel Media as an advertising body. And so a lot of folks don't know that because our footprint here from a digital and design perspective hasn't been as elevated in the past 20 years. And so we're super excited about this project to bring this level of design and digital advertising and community content to Columbus. And so what we're proposing today isn't new to Orange Barrel Media. This is our model that we've taken into a lot of cities across the country. I believe we're in 31 different markets across the country, ranging from LA, West Hollywood, New York, Boston, Houston, Atlanta, Chicago, just to name a few. And so as Columbus grows, as we respond post-COVID, we thought that it was critical to bring this type of signage to this gateway corridor into downtown Columbus and also support the community. Not only the community, local businesses, but also the tourism destination marketing organizations and also our historic preservation groups as well. And so if you guys could go to slide 5, let me show you a quick example. Let's stop here. So this is like an example of the type of signage, that we're building. Our signage, we have an in-house architect design firm that designs our signs. And as you can tell from this example, we're building signs that complement the existing architecture of buildings. And so could you go to the next slide, please? This sign right here is one of our newest signs that was recently approved in West Hollywood. And our focus around this sign was really about building a sign that had context and blended in with the existing environment. And so as you look at this sign, it's located next to a gas station. And so a play off of gas, which comes out of the ground, is what else comes out of the ground. As you can see, the pipes, you see flowers coming out of the pipes as a play. Flowers come out of the ground as well. And so really highly elevated design signs is what we've been focused on, and that's been critical to our growth over the last 20 years. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we've expanded from Columbus to 31 markets across the country. When I started at Orangeboro 5 years ago, I believe we had 35 or 40 employees. We're upwards of over 150 employees with offices in New York, our headquarters here in Columbus, Charlotte, and LA. Okay, go to slide 10, please. Right there. I won't go over every single bullet point. Jackie has probably read this presentation a lot of times, just the same bullet points from our last application, and she did a really good job explaining some of the focus points of the program. But a couple things that I wanted to highlight. The sign design that we're talking about today is based on the feedback that was incorporated from previous discussions with the Historic Resource Commission. The sign is an opportunity to provide, emergency messaging, city and community content messaging. And as Mayor Coleman mentioned, 5% of this time on the sign will be dedicated to the North Market District and their tenants and employees, and tenants and businesses located within the market. Our process around signage across the country is a community-oriented approach. With that being said, all of our signs, even our digital kiosks that you see around town, have art, have community content, as well as commercial advertising, and this sign will be no different. And now I'll hand it over to Mr. Randy Black. Here.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be back. As you'll recall, we looked at this conceptually previously, and as was mentioned, a lot of the elements that were of concern have been addressed, I believe. The important thing to sort of start off with here from a preservation standpoint is how the sign is installed, where it's installed. Will there be any damage to the structure, any damage to contributing historical elements? That, of course, is not the case, and that's essential. So it's guideline sensitive treatment of the existing building, which was approved by this commission. And it's only on the west elevation facing I-670. And one could make the case that it's more fitting with its location there and contemporary in style and in logic. So from a preservation standpoint, looking at the guidelines, it seems like that it meets the standards for new construction, for signage treatment. The one element that's glaring is that digital signage on this scale and of this size is unique. It's not been previously reviewed by this commission in my experience. So it's about signage materials, appearance. Those things are important. But in terms of standards for new construction, for signage, the removal of the installation meets the standards. Should this ever be removed, which is not a part of the plan and is not seen in the near future or even the distant future, but should that ever happen, it meets the requirements, the architectural review requirements. From that perspective, it seems to me the building is intended to reflect the new. This is the 21st century. Having worked in the sign business over the years with sign painters, you all know the history of signs to some degree. Hand lettering used to be the way. There's very little hand lettering done anymore. That evolved into plastic lettering and paste-on letters and glass letters and wood cutout letters. Moving forward in time, halo lettering, different kinds of lighting, neon. In each case, the new styles were in many instances seen as a bad move for the industry. I think that the digital signage case is similar to that in terms of development of the signage industry. Having said all of that, this is such a unique location. It would seem to me that this kind of setting doesn't exist. I'm not certain that I'm completely correct on this, but I don't know of any other site that has this kind of location, these kind of conditions, major freeway access, is a part of the rationale behind this, plus the fact that this is a new 21st century addition approved by a commission in a district. Those things need to be considered in terms of the appropriateness of this request, it seems to me. Give it a
Thank you. If we could go to, I'll actually stay here. So one point that I want to make is related to the design. And so in our previous meetings with the commission, we did receive feedback about the sign size and sign location. So based on that feedback with the new design, we adjusted the design to be more architecturally compatible with the facade. And so as you can see here, we shifted the sign down away from the AC Hotel sign and made sure that the sign was within the darker gray facade. Based on this design, I think that we met the request of the commission based on our last meetings. But I did want to point out that we did, in fact, implement the recommended changes to the sign design.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is probably one of the most complex cases I think I've seen before this commission. So, we look to deal with these effectively. We look to modernize, accordingly to address concerns. It doesn't mesh with the guidelines in a number of ways, just when we look down the staff report. And so, we look down the staff report, it's very explicit about prohibition of billboards and other things, and maybe without us, if as a commission, the rest of the commission wants to follow staff advice about providing an advisory recommendation to council on the use. What I would ask is can the applicant speak to how this is not additionally a billboard or signage for us?
Would you have?
I understand it's unique in its installation, and I understand there's some benefits, but there are a lot of things that are, we follow like short north guidelines on signage. In fact, I remember when this hotel came through, we were very restrictive on the hotel itself about the size of AC hotels and Marriott and other things, because they had to follow a set of guidelines on signs. So there's a lot of variance that ends up being provided if we approve this, but even some of your own applications call this a billboard. So I have questions whether this is this offsite signage. What, to me, I'm just looking for additional information from you, how this doesn't qualify as being a billboard, which is maybe prohibited in use. So we can provide a positive recommendation potentially to city council, or consider ways that alternatively it's not, amongst those and conflicting with those guidelines.
This may be off aside from what you're asking, but one of the things that I thought was important is taking, when I was looking this over and trying to make sure that everything fits with guidelines the way I feel they should. A direct quote from the Short North Guidelines on signage is, "The purpose of signage is to communicate in a clear and effective manner while serving as an aesthetic accompaniment to the associated building." I think this is an aesthetic accompaniment. One could argue that, but the areas, the Short North signs also provide an opportunity to reinforce creativity and craftsmanship of the district. And I believe that this kind of new installation is in keeping with that kind of craftsmanship, even though others may feel, well, this is awfully new, we don't do it that way. I would argue that that's what they said when neon was coming out, or when sandblasting glass was coming out.
So I would view this more as an art installation than a billboard.
Okay.
So that's why I felt to point out the Columbus Museum of Art supports this as well. Because, all you've seen Orange Barrel do in this city and in other cities is frankly install art installations. And that's what this is. It just happens that this art installation will have other value to small businesses in the area. It'll provide emergency contacts when it's needed. when big conventions come to town, come to see, you know, the new people in our city, we're trying to get them in, you know, they, you know, have this gateway be, you know, showing what that is. But nothing Orange Barrel does in any of their work anywhere in America is anything less than they're all art installations, and we don't view them as billboards in the traditional sense. Billboards have a different image and a different context than what we're talking about here. It is, I think the best thing to do is put up that Hollywood thing. That right there is a work of art. And that's what this, I believe this will be as well. That's why the support from everybody.
And I think if you go back to the beginning of our deck, one of our first slides says reimagining the billboard. I'm not sure what you're referencing as far as us referencing this as a billboard, but.
Well, you just in your packet several times you uses the word billboard. So then you yourself are sort of saying you have a billboard here, right? You're reimagining the billboard.
That's the language that's used in Columbus, unfortunately. But it's not, I would say, not the appropriate language of what this really is.
Yeah, the page that says reimagining the billboard is exactly expressing that point. We don't look at our signs as billboards. In fact, we work with Tom Wiscombe, who I'm sure you guys all know, who built BMW World we build the most sophisticated outdoor media object in the entire country in West Hollywood. One of the most remarkable signs is not in this deck, but that's an example of, you know, a $12 million sign that we built in partnership with the city. An elevated design that someone could call a billboard, but I think we would all probably agree that it's a work of art. And for all of our signs, we pride ourselves that when we go out and we talk to people, we say we don't do billboards. We don't do a sign on a stick on a highway, a static sign that has, you know, an injury attorney on there. No shame to injury attorneys, but you know, so we pride ourselves on the design element and aspect and art of our signage.
So like that one nationwide, I think it was a nationwide ad on the side of a building, paint pouring down the side. I forget exactly where that was. Everybody recognized that. That is a work of art. Delivered a message, but it was a work of art.
I'm curious, you had mentioned prior in the presentation about, you know, generating some interest in some of the North Market businesses.
Yes.
That there was a percentage of the
Yes.
time on the signage that would be devoted to those folks. I'm curious for the balance of the time.
Yes.
What is intended to be
Well,
on
let's
the
go
sign?
through it. So let's go through it. Let me find that.
So one of the things I kind of want to be cautious though about is that we cannot, per the guidelines, make any decisions related to that kind of thing.
Sure.
Programming thing. So we've got to be within the context of our guidelines. And I don't know that we can, and we have to be very aware of what our purview or rules are. Because I don't know that the tricks of our guidelines we have to deal with that program.
I'm just curious because
Yeah.
we talk about what is a billboard.
Oh.
There is a definition, right? And so it's about advertisement
So
That's a good one.
So I'm saying if 95% of it is for advertisement of things that aren't on premise, then you know just by the definition that we're looking at in the city code, you know, just curious how we're going to interpret that.
what answer that question quickly. So take that nationwide sign, you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
That was an advertisement, but you wouldn't call it a billboard, you call it a work of art. Same here. So just to answer your question, a minimum of 10% of the time on the sign will be only for artists to put their stuff up in the museum, community content, no cost. It just has to be just beautiful. 5% is for North Market Historic District nonprofit at no cost. Another 10% is for the on-premise business, ACO2. And 5% of the revenue goes to support historic preservation in the city. This kind of the small businesses in the area will also receive a significant discount on the work that they do for some of this medium here. And the hardest thing about changing Columbus is some of the language we use. This is, that's what we're used to saying, billboards. That's not what this really is, even though there will be a portion of this for revenue, for advertising, but even the advertising is uniquely different than anything else that's out there in the city. And it'd be tough to go, that's not a billboard to me. So language matters. And that's the trouble we have with this. Is it a billboard or not? We think it's a work of art. It's installation. Thing that wins awards and recognition from around the country. The Main Street Bridge is not just a bridge, it is one of the only self-supporting bridges in the country in architectural engineering feat. But it's in Columbus. This is sort of in that category, unique.
But when I go back to the staff analysis is pretty depth here. And is the applicant okay with us as a group not getting into the gritty details of the design, but rather really weighing in on whether the use is appropriate first? Because it seems like there's also some input that this is going to have to go to council. There may be some additional input. There may be additional departments I think that have to weigh in. It's a very unique thing. We all know when you go through, various site plan compliances, et cetera, there's a lot of other departments outside of ours. And it looks like, Department of Building Services and Zoning Services has determined that there's other things here that need to be buried in doing use. Would you be okay that we focus sort of on the recommendation of the use and discuss the use and sort of revisit the actual design component?
Sure.
And then Jacqueline, what does it really mean when it's kind of an advisory recommendation on use on council? Is that, what does that really mean to us? Because I don't think we've been tasked with an advisory recommendation before.
No, so I would think in that when we make recommendations for variances or changes of use, we're making a recommendation here, it's not an approval because the approval will need to come to city council. So we focus on use first, as building and zoning has identified that there would be some variances that don't might be code that the city council needs to approve. And that way, if city council approves it, then we would know and be able to comment further on that actual design.
And that is much like, zoning code says you can build a 6-story building, but, now applicant comes forward and says, well, I'm going to build a 6-story building, but you see it flanked by 2 2-story buildings. You say, okay, wait, but kind of ultimately the design still rests with this body. So, but at least this gives you the applicant some clarity, I guess, on use, and the use will be allowed.
Correct.
Accepted. Okay, great. I guess I would look to your input from the commission on the use. It's the 50,000 foot view, right, before we get into the 20 foot views. What's there? This was my thoughts or this way.
So when you say variances, use, what sort of dialogue, what
Well, I'm looking, at a wholesale global standpoint of what the applicant has proposed. Do you support the use without getting in particulars, minutiae of design, size, content, look, how it's attached to the building? There's a lot of details, when a sign package comes forward, for example, if this is your signage versus art, even if it is art, we still look at like, how's it attached to the building? So we're kind of removing that out component now and looking for dialogue on the use, which is a non-traditional use.
No, I'm just thinking about a prior application where, it's also related to art, so that there was a large, some people might say it was a sign. But, what they were arguing was that it was gonna be more graphic in orientation, and that the actual signage, the advertisement of their space was limited to something within our guidelines. And so on that front, I felt like they had a compelling argument because that was actually just graphic, was intended for artistic purposes. And so I guess what I'm sort of wrestling with at the moment is that if this is for advertisement purposes, then I'm just having a hard time getting over that it's more related to a billboard. I understand, semantics and language and all that. But if the intended use, if a large portion of its use is to advertise, then I'm just wondering if that is appropriate. That's the main thing that strikes me. If you guys were presenting and saying 100% of the time, this is solely intended, it might be lighting effects, it might be whatever, that might be a little bit different of an argument to say, okay, that has an intended use solely for artistic or effect, or accentuating some aspect of the architecture or something along those lines. But I'm curious what the other commissioners have to say as well.
Well, I think that's a good point, because I believe one of the most successful pieces that we've had was on the back of the Frank Packer building on Long Street, which was wonderful. And that was the paint spill.
Yeah.
It's great. It was a great installation, but it was temporary. So it was an art piece that was temporary. And I think we're talking about more of a permanent piece, unless it is temporary.
It was also advertised.
Right. So how long is this going to be a permanent piece, or is this something you're looking at maybe like a 10-year swing, or how, in an ideal world, what would that look like?
In an ideal world, at least 10 years.
Yeah. And perhaps even longer.
Yeah. Okay. We would, of course, upgrade the LEDs in the sign at some point before year 10, but yeah.
Right. Maintain it. Okay.
It raises an interesting question just because what the lifespan of the screens, the equipment is, how often do you have to come back to a commission? This thing falls in a historic district now, so just like people have to replace a roof, et cetera, you have to come back to this commission every couple of years to do upgrades of LED panels. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this kind of mass installation.
The LED replacement is very similar. It's literally pull it out, plug it in. I mean, we wouldn't need to, it could be done in 15 minutes of, like, if a module goes out. As you see some digital signs where modules go out, just send a tech out and they just take that module out, put another module in. It's fairly easy.
My standpoint is I think I've been fairly open and engaged in trying to think outside the box, architecturally, like there are buildings clad in graphics. I mean, that's something. And I think about it, just 2 weeks ago, I was in Vegas, I saw the Sphere, looked at it a lot from the convention center there, saw it, and it's active. But for probably 90% of its time, it is a piece of art, and only a very small percentage it is advertising. So I have to really be sold that if it's on art, to me, the programming suggested, just still a challenge, is still heavily weighted on advertisement. And even then I have to ask, when we look at advertising and signage, we've got the AC Marriott Hotel sign above it that is for the hotel, whether that could ever go away and be absorbed into this down the road when we do revisit does design, does it do we have to have so much signage there? That's a different question. I don't even need you to ever, answer it now. But then, sort of, it also advertises you as well, Orange Barrel. Does the Orange Barrel name need to really occur? We know you're a business. Can't hold it, you're probably in it for money and profit, everybody would be, otherwise why would you put up a sign? But is even that piece something you could remove so that you're, really what we're looking at here is not just one, when I see that elevation right now, that imagery up there right now, I see 3 signs, because I see your name, the center content and an AC sign. So there's just a lot of signs going on, so I think there has, from a use standpoint, I need to be convinced more it's art.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I'm impressed with a lot of art pieces you've done in other cities. And if this thing was just really consistent with some of the, the Hollywood one, that's just great. It kind of jumps out. It's got some cool things to it. Or you had some other unique ones in there. And this feels to me like it isn't engaging like art would be if it were truly art a little bit. But I'm also advocating to break the boundary if that's what you're advocating for art. And, if the use is maybe approved, maybe you come back with something even wilder in design when we do talk about design, because if it's art, it should be art, then make it art.
I would, go ahead.
But just Orange Barrel thing, I'm circling that. That's the Orange Barrel sign, something to talk about.
Okay.
But might I suggest that art and advertisement can be the same? And in Orange Barrel's business model is that they are the same. If this were another company, that might be different. But the truth is that they're married, and that is the business model of this company. And that's why they're now the most important in the country, because they recognize that, and so does everyone else. And that's the uniqueness of this. And so if I could convince you that art and advertising can be the same, that sometimes, in our case, all the time, there's no distinction between the two. And yes, they make revenue off of it. But who gives away, like 20-25% to nonprofit, actually more than that, if you total it all up. And so in addition to that, art and advertising being the same, that the utility here is the notion that we have to bring back downtown. We have a 33-story building right next door, and we have all these tenants at North Market that they're struggling. This helps them. And this adds to the vibrancy and the life of the city and the businesses that are located here as well. On top of it, that's what makes this so unique. And if this were just a static sign put up there, it's a billboard. I get it. Totally get it. That's not what this really is. So I'd like to have further discussion on just opening your frame of reference that if it's advertising, it can't be art. And we're saying, well, in our business model, art and advertising are the same exact thing.
And I think that Mr. Gibney actually just helped prove that point when he mentioned the spewing of the paint coming off the wall. And he in fact said that was art. That was actually advertising in art. And that's how the company was built. So To this point, we're dedicating content at least a minimum of 25% of the time on the sign. In the world of advertising, your sign is hardly ever 100% occupied. So we could probably guess that it would be above, somewhere near 40% of the time, if I had to just guess, that would go to community content. So we're talking about content for the North Market businesses. We're talking about content for the Columbus Museum of Arts, bringing the artists that are in the museum, the exhibits in the museum out onto our signage. We're talking about local artists in the community, paying them to curate art to put on this sign. So it's a whole program around programming the sign with community content and art. Advertising is just another component. And so the way that we look at advertising is similar to how we look at television, radio, Google. When you watch a television show, you're watching a show and you're getting ads in between the shows. It's an advertising platform, but it doesn't feel like it because you're getting a show. When you're listening to music on the radio, you're listening to music, but it's an advertising platform. There's ads in between those songs. And the same with Google. They're just giving you information in between the ads. And so it's no different when we look at our signage. Yes, there's going to be advertising because we need to sustain the business model, but we're going to infuse it with community content art. So we don't look at it as a billboard. We look at this as a community asset. We look at this as a piece of art, and we look at this as something that the community can use to help the community, not just a money grab. And so I agree with Mayor Coleman. I think that it can be advertising in art, and we've been really successful at doing this across the country.
It's kind of like, Steve Spielberg does a movie. But the way he finances that movie, you'll have a Coke bottle in it. And guess what? That's advertising the Coke. They pay for that in the movie. But is that film or is that advertising? Well, it's both.
I think your charitable contributions are very commendable, but can't really enter into the decision because we can't have people coming up and say, oh, look, I want to have a historical structure here and I want to paint it pink and do odd things with it, but I'm going to give $1 million to somewhere.
Well, I get it.
And that sure, it's not a matter of you get treated differently because you give to the community or you give to a charity. So I have to look at this as to what the regulations say. I have no problem with making money on anything. I don't know a single artist who doesn't want to sell their work. And the idea that art somehow, if the artist is profitable, is somehow less of an artist. I think Andy Warhol kind of blurred the lines between, what's a product, kind of product we viewed as art. And certainly billboards were called roadside art in the 1950s. And certainly they were called that kind of a reaction to First Lady Bird Johnson's kind of war on billboards back then. Which I think when billboards maybe started getting a negative connotation. But I have to look at this in the context of anybody who sits where you're sitting and says, I want to do something similar. If the Hampton says, I want to do the same thing that the neighboring hotel did on my building, I too am on the edge of the historical district. I too am a contemporary building attached to some historical pieces. And having set the precedent, can we allow them to do that? Maybe we can. Maybe our whole concept in the North Market of using the guidelines that we currently do might be inappropriate. I mean, a market area historically, if you look at a North Market or a market district in the 1880s, the 1920s, it was just covered with signs. I mean, it was about signs and information that gives it real excitement. You go to other countries like Seoul and places down in their commercial district. It is just built, it's like Las Vegas. The North Market District, probably more appropriate to having billboards than the downtown government center area, which there seem to be allowed there. But I also have to look at what's our current guidelines like. I have to be consistent with everybody who makes requests, and I have to be able to, if this precedent is set, be very clear that when the next person sitting there in the edge of a historical district says, I want to do the same thing, I want to build a, how tall is that thing? So we need, that idea. Then on another note, fairly often we've we've not generally allowed multiple signs occurring on the same building. And there have been people who have wanted to put 2 or 3 signs on the building that we have denied. So I'm looking at the use here where we have 3 signs in a row, as we brought up before. And I can think of other people that we haven't allowed that to happen. So that, I think, as far as a civic use here, may be an issue. But my biggest issue is, if we set a precedent, we have to treat everybody the same. Everybody who comes here has to be able to have the same rights that you do, even if they don't donate to charity.
Yeah, so I think I'm just thinking through Joe's comment earlier and just thinking about, if this is a digital thing, but the advertising piece is very small element of that's happening. What does that mean? So just trying to unpack how the content on this will work in terms of the, is this digital artwork, if you will, that's dynamic? What kind of things happen with this? And I wasn't here at the original commission when this came through, so just want to hear your thoughts on that and how this will really work.
Yeah, and so from a digital art perspective, if there's can you go to slide 3? The next slide. Here. So from a digital art perspective, what we would do, we would work with artists. We would work with the Columbus Museum of Arts, the Wexner Center for Arts, other art organizations across the country, and we would program the sign with art. And so we would pay our artists to curate this art. It would be dynamic art. A lot of it would be probably Columbus focused with the Columbus Nexus. So Columbus artists, Columbus museums, Columbus exhibits. And through our community outreach and engagement art team, they would work with them to develop these partnerships to program the art consistently throughout the entire calendar year.
So I think as I kind of think through that, there's a significant difference of a dynamic art focused thing that has the actual advertising piece as a small component versus it being, the entire element is that piece. So that's what I'm just trying to think through and maybe.
I'd like to go back
Yeah.
and respond to you on that.
Yeah.
And back to, again, the nationwide
Right.
installation.
That's part of.
It's the 100% advertising and 100% art. You can't distinguish between the two.
Yeah.
And that's a distinction. It's going to be hard to kind of say, well, this is the dividing line.
Right.
That's not the world of it. This is not where we are anymore.
It
just not.
And I don't know that it helps if we get into a back and forth about if it's 60% of the time or 95% of the time on the sign. I mean, the programming of the sign sometimes is going to be more community content than advertising. It's just the nature of the business. Sometimes it won't, but there's always going to be a dedicated portion of time for that type of content. So at no point is it going to be 100% of advertising. And so, you know, this is something we've done successfully on hundreds of sites. This isn't something new. This is something we're finally bringing to Columbus because we think that the market has grown and it's ready for this type of signage, just with all the growth and development in downtown Columbus. But I mean, from a programming perspective, I mean, we're the best in the business to do this type of work.
I should give a little more background on what I was focused on and remain focused on from a preservation standpoint is this appropriate for this location on this particular building? Not thinking about content or any of the other things. It's about the installation. Will it do detrimental damage to the building? Does it fit in with the building? I would argue, I would submit that this digital use, this digital installation fits well with the style of that elevation, that new addition. The number of signs, that's something that could be discussed, that's a concern, but from a strictly preservation standpoint, standards for new construction, 3116.12, standards for new construction, the commission shall consider in addition to any other pertinent factors which are a part of this discussion, the architectural characteristics typical of structures in the district, the particular structure in the district, and the architectural value and significance of the proposal. And I believe that that's something that fits here. Beyond that, the Short North Guidelines, I think it fits in with both the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation and new construction, and as well as Short North Guidelines. So those are the things that I was focusing most on. The installation is a new kind of installation. And I think from a preservation standpoint, it fits the standards. How that's used over time, what the content is kind of a secondary component to this that you're focusing on, which I think is correct. But in terms of its location and the architectural conditions present, it seems to me to be perfectly in keeping with the standards.
Randy, I would sort of, though, encourage you to read deeper to the standards.
Sure.
And to know the uphill battle, because again, this is not personal. Actually, there are some great signs out there. They're just not districts. And if we were the downtown commission, I don't know, you might have a full house that says, yeah, go do the sign, right? So just, when I look at the Columbus Register guidelines out there, you've got verbatim, ensure that the size and placement of a new sign complements the building's architectural style. Then it really talks about placement, first and second floors. There's another reference in there, do not install large wall signs. There's language in there specific to that. Add smaller plaque type wall signs instead. For new signs, use external illumination as opposed to internal illumination. Then when we go into the Short North Guidelines for signage, it becomes very specific to even prohibit LEDs. There's an entire section on LED signage. So there's probably easily, you feel free to, I would say, obtain a copy of the staff report, because there's probably, for us, when we look at evaluating the criteria and setting precedent and or incorrectly ruling against our own guidelines, what we have to be very cautious of. We probably have an uphill battle of over a dozen things here or more. So I just want to be very cautious on those sorts of things, because we can't be arbitrary in our decision or our decision making. And if we are varying from the guideline, and on occasion there have precedent, now I wouldn't say precedent setting, unique cases. When this ultimately would come around as potential design case, is we have to overcome every single one of those items, both in the original guidelines and in the Short North sign guidelines. So there's a lot to consider case by case And I just encourage you to get a copy of that staff report and be able to look at how you're responding to each one of those things, because there's a lot here to unpack. And
I do feel that the specific location is unique to this application and really differentiates it from, Clyde mentioned the other site in the Hampton Inn. I don't see a similarity there in terms of location. There are very different realities of the location of that particular building in my mind that wouldn't warrant this kind of installation.
But I go so far as this, the short north signage guidelines, page 3. Pedestrian oriented signage is preferred. This is clearly not a pedestrian oriented sign. So that's where, you know, we just want to ensure that you build a case that really gives us the ability that even if it convinced us all here, it's art, that we are not sitting with the next applicant here saying, I want one of these two. If you gave it to them, and I'm gonna, you know, there has to be a unique set of circumstances, and there's just a lot not building the unique case right now. You know, now, likewise, I think there's still anything we would do in an advisory to council, like has been requested from staff, is advisory to council. Council can make their decisions. There are in that staff report, not only our previous meeting comments, of course, which we love when you can incorporate design changes as this thing moves through progression. But there are the other sections of code. There's the uses, the appropriateness, the I-670 area, and the graphics, special graphics controls, and those kinds of things. So I think we're on an appropriate path of sort of advising council on the use, and then we struggle with the design a little bit more. And anything we do, with my commission, anything that would be an advisory, it'd be an advisory in the affirmative despite the vote. That's just always how we traditionally, motions are always an affirmative as well. But, I just want to make sure that we're putting forth an advisory too that we can stand behind with reason. Likewise too, if you want us to take more time on this, we're also happy to always continue at any given time as well. If you want more time to digest the staff report and those sorts of things as well. If you want absolutely no action tonight, it's all up to you what you would like. You are in a conceptual review only. There was a staff recommendation to do an advisory to council because of all the other circumstances. I think there's wisdom in staff's advice as well, rather than getting into the gritty of the design too. So I would kind of bounce the ball a little bit back to this before I get here to flying. Just what would you like us to do as well?
Well, as I hear this, a couple things come to mind. One is that on the staff recommendation, maybe the advisory ought to be on some of those specifics and not on the big, I use the word pitching, overall use. Seems to me that's a policy decision council should make anyway. And maybe the focus of your advisory ought to be on the specific things both of you just talked about. And on the larger questions of whether the sign itself is appropriate or the use is appropriate. Maybe that's something for council to make a broader policy decision. And on that, maybe there is no recommendation one way or another.
Ultimately, so
that issue.
So sort of hearing that and maybe even some partiality agreeing with what you're saying, also to give you enough time to adequately prepare and for us to consider even the advisory recommendation. As a chair, I'd like to recommend that actually we continue this for this evening.
Yeah.
So don't do anything.
Yep.
And even working with staff or with others in the city departments to even put together a draft of the advisory recommendation you would like for us to consider. I have no problem with that. But I want to make sure that you have seen and had enough time to adequately look through everything.
That would be fair.
I'd also like to, I think you made a good case that science changed over time. Digital's new. Ohio is the home of the National Science Museum.
Is it real?
Sure.
I never knew that.
If you have not visited
Everybody should
it,
go.
it's in Cincinnati. It is wonderful. It starts with the hand painted gold leaf signs and goes all the way up through the
It's
digital.
spectacular.
You know, and, you know, so, you know, maybe it's time that we look at that we look at our guidelines. Maybe our guidelines, in fact, are what's out of date and aren't keeping up. But the guidelines are what we have now, and that's the only thing that we can that we need to make our decisions on are what we have.
So I think your proposal, Mr. Chair, is probably, in my view, the right way to go.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion, HR-24-04-024, 517 Park Street, that we continue this to the next commission meeting in May.
Motion, is there a second? So having a second, is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, passes. We continue to work with staff on what agenda you'd like to be on again.
Thank you.
And or, so does this go before downtown review? This- So,
Sorry, submitted for downtown.
so I would propose one thing. We did this uniquely on just a couple projects. Because it is complicated, it is really different. If we can advocate for a special meeting, including the downtown commission, on a joint meeting, that we have the rules separately, and we have different guidelines. If, as this proceeds in the future, I think there's a great value in the bodies sort of hearing what the other bodies seeing, hearing, saying. And, because I think it's a very complicated thing to go through, even when you get a nitty-gritty design.
You can bring it up.
That's what I would have.
It might be a difficult thing.
Right.
It'll definitely take.
Have you ever had one together?
We have as a body.
Sure did.
Which
That was at the
application?
special meeting protocol.
The Pizzuti
Which-
project,
Which one, the Pizzuti project?
back in the day, yeah, Ty and the attorney were together.
And we contemplated, I think, Park Market too at one time, but it didn't, it wasn't necessary.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time
Thank you.
and your comments.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Are there, so it looks like we still have that one application, that's the person the applicant did not show, so that would continue to application number 4. Is there a motion to continue? There is a motion, is there a second? Second. Having a motion for regular discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion passes, that case is continued. Are there any other items of old business, Jack?
No, old business and no new business.
Having no old business and no new business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 6:49 PM. Thank you.